story of Peter Parker is known by people the world over.
What is your deal?
Huh? Nothing.
A normal nerd gets bitten by a radioactive spider, gets some powers, and learns that with great powers comes great responsibility. If that's all you know, you only know a small part of the story, as Peter Parker isn't the only spider on the web. Let's find out if any can replace Peter Parker at what he does best, be Spider-Man. Wouldn't it be awesome if you had CBR sense? Click the subscribe button and gain your powers today.
Oh, awesome.
SpiderHam. The spectacular SpiderHam is not a pig, but at the same time is. Confusing, isn't it? Though he didn't start as a pig, he actually began as Peter the Spider. He lived with May Porker, an elderly pig who had created a radioactive hair dryer that backfired and irradiated May. She went a bit cray-cray and bit the spider, who then transformed into an anthropomorphic pig that retained his spider abilities. Adapting the last name of Porker after co-opted Ant, he becomes a hero, going on adventures with characters such as Captain Americat and Iron Mouse. SpiderHam is definitely the comic relief of the Spider family, and being a cartoon pig for sure lends to that. As comical as Spider-Man can be, the porcine Avenger could be blown through a building, watch some stars around his head, then shake it off and come back with everything he has. SpiderHam is what happens when you mix Spidey with Looney Tunes, and the result is good old-fashioned cartoon fun and a genuinely surprising amount of power. He's definitely popular though, as he has been added to a new series titled Web Warriors.
If it's any consolation, you'll probably taste terrible.
SpiderGirl. Mayday Parker is the daughter of Peter and Mary Jane in an alternate reality. First appearing in a What If storyline from the late 90s, Mayday, named after Aunt May, wasn't sure if she would develop powers. Her parents were extremely hopeful she wouldn't. Once in high school, those powers did indeed develop, and she took her old Uncle Ben Reilly's costume and started to fight crime. She was at first trying to keep it away from her father, but eventually letting him know what she was doing. She disappeared from the comics for a bit, but a full-grown version of Mayday entered back into the Marvel main universe during the latest Secret Wars miniseries. With all of the powers of her father, Mayday also has the best character traits of each of her parents. She's beautiful, charismatic, and just as popular as her mother. Mayday also has the brains and luck of her father. She was one of the best on the basketball team in her school until her powers developed, where she stopped to be fair to everyone else, proving that she also inherited her sense of honor and good judgment from both of her folks.
You want me so bad? Come get me.
SpiderMan Noir. This series is one of the darkest versions of Peter Parker. Spider-Man Noir was raised during the Great Depression by his political activist Aunt May and Uncle Ben. After finding his uncle's mutilated body, like we said, the 50s detective novel-inspired Noir had an edge. Peter decided to use the sense instilled in him that good would always overcome evil. He became an investigative reporter to find the real bad guys. Spider-Man Noir gets a place on this list because even though he technically is Peter Parker, he's from a different dimension and timeline. His origin story is slightly different as well. He got his powers from a spider and a mystic relic, as opposed to a radioactive spider. These changes, along with the dark and gritty take on the character, more than make him a necessary addition. He has the same abilities as normal Peter, but developed organic webbing opposed to creating his own web shooters. Noir Peter prefers to use his agility and acrobatic ability, leaping from place to place. More of a parkour Peter, as opposed to a swinging through the city Pete. This version of Peter also has no aversion to guns and uses a revolver regularly.
I don't know if ditching me is the best plan.
Silk. Silk is a more recent addition to the Marvel Universe, and her story is very similar to Spider-Man's. Well, similar in the beginning at least, then it takes an odd story swerve. Apparently, Peter had always thought the spider that bit him scurried off and died after giving him the gift that kept on giving. But before the spider went on to Spidey heaven, it still had a bit of the munchies and bit a girl by the name of Cindy Moon. Cindy soon realized she had powers, but before revealing them, she received an offer from the creepy Ezekiel Sims. She took the offer, living her life in a bunker underneath the flagship building of Ezekiel's business empire. She thought she was protecting her family, but after escaping, she realized she could be more. Silk has the same powers of Spider-Man, but they are more potent. For instance, Silk does not use web shooters. Her webbing is entirely organic. She even used it as her first costume. She has a much stronger Spidey sense than Peter, and possibly because they were bitten by the same spider, they have an almost insatiable desire to be together, often having to be separated when in the same room. What a sticky relationship that must be, huh? Venom. Eddie Brock was a photographer for the Daily Bugle whose big break turned into a living nightmare. When a serial killer called him looking to turn himself in, Eddie jumped at the chance to make a name for himself. He met with the killer, writing a detailed story of the man's confessions, which led to the supposed serial killer turning himself in. Later on, when Spider-Man caught the actual culprit of the crimes, it was revealed Eddie's story was about a fraud, an attention seeker. His career ruined, he scrounged for work, developing an unhealthy hatred for the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. As things do in the comics, by chance, he stumbled upon and merged with a symbiote, taking the name Venom. It was then Eddie who learned he wasn't the only one with a deep-seated hatred for Spider-Man. As an added bonus, he also learned his identity. What solidifies Venom's place on this list, and as a spider person, is the fact that the symbiote absorbs powers. So not only is he stronger because he wants to merge with Parker, he can offset Spider-Man's spider sense, taking out some of Spidey's best defenses and making Venom one of his most potentially deadly enemies.
Hola! ¿Dónde está la biblioteca?
Superior Spider-Man. Dr. Otto Octavius is one of Spider-Man's greatest enemies. So when Doc found out he was dying, he made peace and accepted his fate. Okay, not really. He made the extremely rational decision to swap his mind into Spider-Man's body and taking over his life. The man who always thwarted his plans, of course, it didn't go as planned. While he did succeed in getting his mind into Peter Parker's body, he got all of his baggage too. Everything Peter had ever been through, with the joys and pains that make him Spider-Man, merged with Doc. As Peter lied dying in Doc Ock's body, Doc made a promise to live up to his legacy, but do it better. In the Superior Spider-Man series, Ock did become better than Peter in some aspects. He went back to college to get Peter's degree, mostly because he refused to be called anything other than Doctor. He also created spider bots, which would patrol the city and send him alerts so he could decide if a crime warranted his attention. This more methodical, yet more savage way of being a hero gave Ock something Peter always seemed to be at odds with, having a personal life. SpiderGwen. Going by the moniker of Spider-Woman in her home universe, Spider-Gwen is very much a rebel. After her mother died, Gwen's father, George, tried to instill the ideals into his daughter. But Gwen resisted, as her more creative natural side usually put the pair at odds. After being bitten by a radioactive spider and given web shooters and a costume by Janet Van Dyne, the now retired hero got even more creative. At first, she was drawn to the freedom her new powers gave her, forgetting the whole great power, great responsibility mantra. Eventually, Gwen came to realize she could be a hero, especially when her father supported her efforts. Still, it took a harsh reality of her friend Peter Parker turning himself into a lizard and subsequently dying for Gwen to embrace her responsibility. Spider-Gwen, while still a new player to the Marvel Universe, is extremely popular. Not only does she have all the powers of Spidey, including web shooters that never run out of juice thanks to Janet's design, she also has a keen analytical mind, a trait she picked up from her father, a lifelong police officer.
Your parents gym teachers or something?
Scarlet Spider. Kane as the Scarlet Spider was a character long in the making, the original clone of Peter Parker created by the Jackal, his first of many attempts to clone Peter. After some time, Kane began to deteriorate, but survived and started hunting bad guys. His costume of choice was a sign of the times, resembling Spawn, who was all the rage. Over time, Kane would wind up in Houston, converting to heroism and taking up the mantle of the Scarlet Spider. His main prey were human traffickers, and Kane did not have any issues spilling blood. In addition to the normal spider powers, Kane also had a healing factor from an augmentation in his DNA due to the cloning process. Plus, his own organic webbing that emits from his forearms. He also has an immunity to Spidey's spider sense. His strangest power is called the Mark of Kane. After defeating an opponent, he would burn a mark into his victim's face. Ouch. He also has two retractable claws similar to Wolverine called the Sting of Kane. Due to the flaws in his genetic makeup, Kane does not look like an ordinary human, his skin covered with a web-like mass of disfigured scars.
What?
Spidey clone. Ben Reilly was supposed to be the perfect clone of Peter. For a while, the two of them believed Ben was in fact the original and Peter was the clone. Well, our minds were blown. After taking advantage of the confusion, Peter got the idea to embrace fatherhood and decided to stop being Spider-Man, letting Ben take over in his stead. Even though Ben completely believed himself to be the original web slinger, he still sacrificed his own life in a battle against Green Goblin to save Peter, which answered the question of the real Peter as he dissolved into dust, proving Peter to be the original, but you can't keep a good clone down. Ben had matching powers to Peter, with an intellect to match. Ben's biggest accomplishment was his newly assembled web shooters. Ben's version of the famous piece of tech also includes impact webbing, tracer discs, and stingers coated with a paralyzing agent. These modifications make Ben's web shooters much more bulky than Peter's, which is why he wears them on the outside of his costume. Ben recently returned to the comics, first as the quasi-villainous Jackal, and then once again stepping into his old Scarlet Spider duds.
Okay, let's do this.
Spider-Man. A bite from a radioactive spider is apparently a surefire way to get superpowers. Miles Morales, of the Marvel Ultimate Universe, was bitten by an enhanced spider, similar to Parker. To our surprise, shortly after getting bit, Miles found he had amazing abilities just like Spider-Man. This dang spider is such an evil Oscorp arachnid, you think they would stop making it. Miles, however, wanted nothing to do with his newfound powers. He had just been accepted into a charter school and decided to leave the heroics up to the real Spider-Man. After unsuccessfully coming to the aid of Peter Parker, Miles finally decided to put on a mask. Unknowingly, this was to be his last fight. Miles not only gained a few other abilities Peter had never had, including an invisibility like camouflage, Venom blast similar to 616 Spider-Woman, and his patented finishing maneuver, a spider sting, which has been known to bring down some of the heaviest hitters in both the Ultimate and the 616 universe, all with one little touch. While he may not benefit from the experience of Peter, he does approach every situation with a youthful vigor and childlike sense of wonder. That makes him almost impossible not to like. Which is your favorite version of Spider-Man? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget your CBR cents and subscribe. Thank you for watching.